Arrays in Java by IT's Clear. This is a brief introduction to what an array is and how you use it in Java. Arrays let you store many pieces of data instead of just one piece of data. It's data of one particular type. It uses one name, and it's not just one item of data. So let's look at how this is done. So let's look at how to declare an array. You already know how to declare one integer. You would just say int num, for example, semicolon. And that would give you one place, one box in memory or RAM where you can store that integer. Now, to declare an array, it looks quite complicated, but we will decipher it and look at it carefully. So it's int square brackets num equals new space int square brackets 5 and semicolon. Now this gives you 5 boxes or places in memory or RAM where you can store your integers. Let's look carefully at how we declared it. So instead of just saying int num like we do for one integer, we've added some square brackets here on the left between int and num. That already tells Java that we are declaring an array. And then we say equals new. Now this keyword new tells you that an array is not just a normal primitive type of data. It is an object. Okay, so we say equals new. And then we put the type of the variable again. We said on the left that it's an integer, so we repeat that, int. And then we put the square brackets again, and we put a number in there. The number, like here we've got 5, tells Java that I want 5 boxes or cells in which to store my data. Each cell has an index. What does this mean? So if I declare int square brackets num equals new int square brackets 3, I'm declaring an array of 3 cells. And as you can see, each cell has a number. So the first cell is number 0, the second cell is number 1, the third cell is number 2, and it goes on like that for a bigger array. The little numbers 0, 1, and 2, these are called the index of the cell or of the array. So if we say num square bracket 0 equals 65, we will store 65 in box 0 or cell 0 of the array. Num1 equals 43. Num square brackets 2 equals 20. If we want an array of real numbers, we would say double square brackets num equals new double square brackets 5. And that will give me 5 little boxes or cells, an array of 5 cells where I can store my data. Let's have a look. If we just put hard-coded data in there, num square brackets 0 equals 6.78, num square brackets 1 equals 40.01, etc. And when I run my code, this is how it's going to look. We will be storing all of these hard-coded numbers into the cells. We use for loops a lot with arrays. Here's our little integer array with 3 integers. And if we wanted to type out or print those 3 values, we could do a for loop. For round bracket int I equals 0 up to I less than 3 and I++. So you're going to see this loop's going to count 0, 1, 2, and then stop. We'll put our curly bracket, system.out.println num square brackets I. and then close our curly brackets. So you can see as the loop counts from 0, we'll get system.out.println num square brackets 0. Then it'll count to 1. We'll get a print line num square brackets 1. Then it'll count to 2, print line num square brackets 2. So we'll get our output. When we print num 0 or num square brackets 0, we'll get 65. Print num square bracket 1, we'll get 43. We print num square brackets 2, we'll get 20. So for loops work really well with arrays, and it doesn't matter how big the array is, as long as you put your I less than the right size of the array, you will be able to work with the whole array in one go. Let's have a look at an array of strings. We've got string square bracket cats equals new string square brackets 10. This is what it would look like. We'll get our indexes counting from 0 to 9. We'll do a for loop. For int I equals 0, I less than 10, I plus plus. Put our curly brackets, then we'll say cats square bracket I equals JOptionPane.show input dialog, input a cat name, and close our curly brackets. And then we can input all our cat names as the loop counts from 0 to 9. There's one very useful way that you can work with the length of the array. Instead of remembering how long your array is, you can use the dot length variable. Remember that arrays are objects, so dot length is using one of the fields of the object. So if we declare double square brackets num equals new double square brackets 5, so we've got an array of 5 real numbers, we can say for int I equals 0, I less than num dot length. Instead of putting a 5 here, I'm saying num dot length because num dot length is 5. There are 5 cells in this array. I plus plus. And then we could say num square brackets I equals double dot plus double JOptionPane.show input dialog input number. And as we run this, this code, we will be able to input all our numbers into the array. We can put random numbers into an array really easily. So let's have a look. If we've got an integer array, int square brackets num equals new int square brackets 5, and then we've got a for loop which counts from 0 to num dot length. Remember, num dot length is the length of the array, which will be 5. Put our curly bracket, then num I equals round brackets int math.random times 10 plus 1, which is going to give me a random number between 1 and 10. So I'm going to store a random number in each cell of this array. And then afterwards, I'll do another for loop which counts from 0 to num.length again, and I will print all the cells of the array. When we run the code, let's have a look. We're going to get our array of 5 cells. As the first for loop runs and counts from 0 to 4, we will generate a random number. Say it generates 8. Then for num square brackets 1 generates a 1. Num square brackets 2, cell 2 gets a 3, cell 3 gets a 1, and cell 4 gets a 6. Then we will run the second for loop, which counts from 0 to less than 5 again, which ends at 4, and we will output 8, then 1, then 3, then 1, and then 6 as we run system.out.println num square brackets I. So let's do a brief summary. Let's look at different array types that you could generate. You can do an integer array, int square brackets num equals new int square brackets 10. You could do a real number array, double, square brackets reals equals new double square brackets 10. And you can see the pattern is always the same. If you've got the square brackets on the left and then the word new on the right, you put the variable type or the data type and then square brackets and the size of the array on the right. So you could do a string array, you could do a character array, and you can do a Boolean array. So, and that's all for today. See you next time. Goodbye.